Before we begin tonight's story, if you're finding these accounts from law enforcement interesting, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It helps us continue sharing these experiences. And I'm curious, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. Now, let's get into this Massachusetts State Police story. My name is Ryan Sullivan, and I need to tell you about something that happened on the Massachusetts Turnpike in October of 2001. I was a state trooper for 18 years before this incident, and I thought I'd seen everything the pike could throw at me. Drunk drivers, multi-car pileups, drug runners trying to make it to New York before dawn. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I encountered at mile marker 17. It was October 23, 2001. I remember the date exactly because it was 6 weeks after 9/11, and we were all still on edge. Every Middle Eastern-looking driver got extra scrutiny. Every abandoned vehicle was treated like a potential threat. The whole country was holding its breath, waiting for the next attack. I was working the overnight shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., patrolling the section of I-90 that cuts through the Berkshire Mountains in western Massachusetts. It's a lonely stretch of highway, especially at night. Dense forests on both sides, steep grades, curves that can catch you off guard if you're not familiar with the road. In October, with the first real cold snap of the season, you get black ice and fog rolling down from the mountains. My daughter Emma was 16 that year, living with her mother in Wellesley. We'd been divorced for 3 years, and Emma still hadn't forgiven me for it. Couldn't blame her, really. I'd chosen the job over the family too many times, missed too many birthdays and school plays. Michelle, my ex-wife, had finally had enough. Said she felt like a widow married to a ghost. That particular night, I tried calling Emma around 9 before my shift started. She'd answered with that flat, annoyed tone teenagers perfect when talking to disappointing parents. "What, Dad? Just wanted to say goodnight. See how your day was." "It was fine. I'm doing homework." "How's the college essay coming?" "Fine. Look, I really need to finish this." "Okay, sweetheart. Love you." Silence, then a sigh. "Yeah. Bye." She hadn't said it back. 3 years of divorce, and she still couldn't say she loved me. That hurt worse than anything Michelle had said during the split. I started my patrol around 10:15 p.m., heading west from the Lee Barracks toward the New York border. Traffic was light, mostly long-haul truckers and the occasional college kid heading home for the weekend. The temperature had dropped to 38 degrees, and a light rain was starting to fall. Around 11:30 p.m., I was approaching mile marker 17 when I noticed something odd. My headlights caught a car on the shoulder, hazards flashing. A silver Honda Accord, maybe 5 years old, perfectly positioned like someone had pulled over carefully rather than in an emergency. I activated my lights and pulled up behind it, running the plate through dispatch as I approached. Massachusetts registration, clean record, registered to a Sarah Chen in Cambridge. "Dispatch, this is Sullivan. I've got a 10 to 15 at mile marker 17 westbound, checking on a disabled vehicle." "Copy that, Sullivan. Be safe out there." I grabbed my flashlight and walked up to the driver's side window, my other hand resting on my service weapon out of habit. The post-9/11 training had emphasized constant vigilance. Every stop could be your last. The woman in the driver's seat was maybe late 30s, Asian, wearing glasses and an MIT sweatshirt. She looked more confused than distressed. When she rolled down her window, the first thing she said was backwards. At least, that's what it sounded like someone had recorded her voice and played it in reverse. A string of syllables that made no linguistic sense. I blinked. "Ma'am, I didn't catch that. Can you repeat?" She said it again, the same backwards gibberish, her face showing frustration that I wasn't understanding her. "Ma'am, are you feeling all right? Have you been drinking?" She shook her head emphatically and pointed forward, down the highway. Then she mimed something with her hands, like trying to explain something complex without words. She pointed at her watch, then made a backward circular motion with her finger. That's when I noticed my radio was acting strange. The usual chatter from dispatch was distorted, choppy, like someone was playing it backwards and forwards simultaneously. And the rain on my windshield, I could see it in my peripheral vision, looked wrong somehow. I took a few steps back from her vehicle to check my surroundings, and that's when I saw it. A semi-truck was approaching from the west, driving in my direction. But it wasn't driving forward. It was driving backwards, at full highway speed, maybe 60 miles an hour. The trailer was leading, the cab following, all of it moving in perfect reverse as if the driver had no idea he was doing it. I grabbed my radio. "Dispatch, I've got a situation here. Semi-truck driving in reverse on the Pike westbound at mile marker 17. I need backup, and I need to shut down this section of highway immediately." The response from dispatch came in that same distorted, backwards-forwards audio. I couldn't make out what they were saying. The semi passed me, and I got a glimpse of the driver. He looked terrified, gripping the wheel, but he wasn't doing anything to stop the truck. It was like the vehicle was driving itself in reverse, and he was just along for the ride. I turned back to the woman in the Honda. She was out of the car now, and she'd pulled out a notebook. She wrote quickly and held it up to me. "I can't talk forward. Everything here is backwards. Been stuck for 3 hours. You need to leave now." I stared at the note, trying to process what was happening. Then I noticed something else. The rain wasn't falling down. It was falling up. Each drop was rising from the pavement, floating upward into the clouds. "What the hell is going on here?" I said, or tried to say, but the words came out backwards too. I heard myself speaking gibberish. The woman wrote again, faster this time. "Temporal inversion. Physics breaking down. Time running backwards in this section. Get out before it spreads." Temporal inversion. Time running backwards. It sounded insane, but I was watching rain fall upward and trucks drive in reverse. Something was very, very wrong with this stretch of highway. I pointed back east toward Lee and made a walking motion. "Get out, leave." She nodded vigorously and started back toward her car. But as I turned to head to my patrol car, I felt it. A wave of something passing through me, like a cold wind that went through my skin and into my bones. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, and when it passed, I felt different. Lighter, somehow. Less tired. I looked down at my hands. They looked the same. But when I caught my reflection in the Honda's window, I could swear my face looked younger. Not much, just a little. Fewer lines around the eyes, less gray in my hair. The woman saw it too. She held up her notebook again. "You're aging backwards. I've lost 4 years in 3 hours. Approximately 1.3 years per hour. Get out now." Aging backwards. I was 42 years old. If I stayed here, I'd get younger. But that didn't sound like a bad thing at first. Who wouldn't want to be younger? Then I thought about it more. If I kept aging backwards, I wouldn't just lose years. I'd lose memories, experiences. Eventually, I'd lose Emma. I'd lose everything that made me who I was. I ran to my patrol car and threw it in drive, intending to get the hell out of this backwards section of highway. But when I hit the gas, the car moved in reverse. Not because I was in reverse gear, but because forward was backwards here. I shifted to reverse, and the car finally started moving in the direction I wanted, away from mile marker 17. But I could only go about 20 feet before I felt that resistance, like I was driving through molasses. The temporal inversion didn't want to let me go. I pushed harder on the gas and slowly, fighting against something I couldn't see, I made it past what must have been the boundary. Suddenly, sound normalized. The rain started falling down instead of up. My radio crackled to life with the normal dispatch chatter. "Sullivan, what's your status? We lost you for a few minutes there." I grabbed the radio, my hands shaking. "Dispatch, I need you to shut down I-90 westbound at mile marker 17. We have a major situation here. Multiple vehicles affected, possible hazmat incident. Get me a supervisor and notify State Police Headquarters." "Copy that, Sullivan. Shutting down the highway now. Supervisor en route. What's the nature of the incident?" How could I explain it? Time running backwards. Rain falling up. I'd sound insane. Unknown hazard in the roadway. Possible gas leak affecting drivers. I need everyone kept away from mile marker 17 until we can assess. Roger that. State Environmental Response Team has been notified. I sat in my patrol car, parked just beyond the boundary of whatever that zone was, and watched. The backwards section was maybe a mile long, I estimated, from mile marker 17 to 18. Within that zone, everything was reversed. A few more vehicles entered from the east, and I watched as they started driving backwards once they crossed the threshold. I got out and tried to wave them down before they entered, but it was too late. They crossed into the backwards mile and immediately reversed direction, drivers panicking as they realized they'd lost control. 20 minutes later, my supervisor, Sergeant Kowalski, arrived with 2 more patrol units. He was a big Polish guy from Worcester, 30 years on the force. Nothing fazed him. Until tonight. I briefed him on what I'd seen, trying to sound as rational as possible. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Sullivan, you're telling me there's a section of highway where time runs backwards?" "I know how it sounds, Sarge, but look, watch that car." A red pickup truck was approaching from the east. We watched as it crossed the threshold at mile marker 18 and immediately started driving in reverse, the driver's brake lights flashing as he tried desperately to stop. "Jesus Christ," Kowalski muttered. "What the hell is that?" "I don't know, but there's a woman trapped in there, a civilian. Dr. Sarah Chen from MIT. She's been in there for 3 hours. She's lost 4 years of age." Lost 4 years. What does that mean? "She's aging backwards, Sarge, getting younger. And I was in there for maybe 90 minutes, and I think I lost 2 years. Look at my face. Do I look younger to you?" Kowalski studied me closely, frowning. "Maybe? Christ, Sullivan, I don't know. This is beyond anything I've ever seen." Over the next hour, we managed to block off both ends of the backwards mile, keeping traffic out. The vehicles that were already inside were stuck, driving in eternal reverse, unable to escape. We counted 8 vehicles total, including Dr. Chen's Honda. Environmental Response showed up with detection equipment, checking for gas leaks, chemical spills, anything that might explain the phenomenon. They found nothing. Radiation levels normal, air quality normal, no hazardous materials detected. One of the environmental techs, a young guy named Marcus, noticed the rain. Guys, is anyone else seeing the rain fall up in that section?" We all looked. Sure enough, within the backwards mile, the rain was rising from the ground to the sky. "That's not a chemical leak," Marcus said, his voice shaking. I don't know what that is. That's impossible." By 3 a.m., we had specialists from MIT, Harvard, and even some federal agencies showing up. Word had spread that something unexplainable was happening on the Mass Pike. They set up equipment, took readings, debated theories. I was standing near one of the barriers when Dr. Chen managed to get to the edge of the backward zone. She couldn't cross out. The temporal boundary seemed to hold people in, but she could stand at the edge and hold up notes. One of the federal agents, a woman from what I assumed was NSA based on her completely non-specific identification, approached me. "Trooper Sullivan, you were the first responder?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you entered the affected zone? For about 90 minutes, yes. How do you feel? Any disorientation, memory loss, physical changes?" "I feel fine. Actually, I feel good. Better than I have in years, more energy." I didn't mention that I suspected I looked younger. That sounded too crazy even for this situation. She made notes on a tablet. "We're going to need to monitor you. This could be a temporal anomaly, possibly related to experimental physics research in the area. Are you familiar with any laboratories or facilities near here?" "No, ma'am. This is just forest and mountains, nothing for miles." She looked troubled. "Then this might be naturally occurring, which is much worse." "Why worse?" "Because if it's artificial, we can potentially shut it down. If it's natural, if something about this location is causing a breakdown in the normal flow of time." She trailed off, looking at the backwards mile. "Then it might spread." "Spread? How? We don't know. But temporal anomalies in theoretical physics don't stay contained. They grow, feed on the chronological energy around them, expand exponentially. If this is what I think it is, by tomorrow this could be 2 miles long. By the next day, 4 miles. Then 8, 16, 32. I did the math in my head. That's geometric progression. In a week, this could cover all of Massachusetts. In a week, Trooper Sullivan, this could cover half the continent. I looked at Dr. Chen, still trapped inside the backwards mile, holding up a new note. "Help me. I'm 34 now. Losing memories." She'd lost 4 more years in the past few hours. At this rate, she'd be a teenager by dawn, a child by tomorrow evening. And if the zone kept expanding, if it doubled every day like the federal agent suggested, my daughter Emma in Wellesley would be inside it within 72 hours. I had to find a way to stop this, or at least understand it. The federal agent was already on her phone, calling in more resources. I heard her mention containment protocols and potential evacuation of western Massachusetts. This was bigger than a traffic incident. This was an existential threat, and it had started right here at mile marker 17, on a cold October night when I just wanted to finish my shift and maybe, possibly, have my daughter tell me she loved me. Now I might not live long enough to hear it. Or worse, I might age backwards until I was too young to remember having a daughter at all. I grabbed my radio and called dispatch. "This is Sullivan. I need you to patch me through to Michelle Sullivan in Wellesley. It's an emergency regarding Emma." There was a pause. "Copy that, Sullivan. Stand by." While I waited, I watched the backwards mile. Rain falling up. Vehicles driving in reverse. Time itself running the wrong direction. And I wondered, if time could run backwards in one place, could it run backwards everywhere? Could the whole world reverse? And if it did, where would it stop? The radio crackled. "Sullivan, I have Michelle Sullivan on the line, patching through." "Ryan?" Michelle's voice, groggy with sleep. "What's wrong? Is it Emma?" "Emma's fine, but Michelle, I need you to do something for me. Tomorrow morning, I need you to pack a bag and take Emma west, away from Boston. Head to Albany or Buffalo, as far as you can get." "What?" "Ryan, it's 3 in the morning. What's going on?" "I can't explain right now, but something's happening out here, something dangerous, and it might spread toward Boston. I need Emma away from here, please." There was a long pause. "You're scaring me." "I'm scared too, but I need you to trust me. Just this once, please." Another pause. "Okay, I'll take her out of school tomorrow. We'll drive to my sister's in Buffalo. Thank you." "Ryan, are you okay? You sound different." "I'm fine. Tell Emma I love her." I will. The line went dead. I looked back at the backwards mile, at Dr. Chen's increasingly desperate notes, at the rain falling up toward the stars. Somewhere in that mile of reversed time was the answer to what was happening, and I had a feeling the only way to find it was to go back in, even if it meant losing years of my life, even if it meant losing myself. By dawn, the backwards mile had doubled, just like the federal agent predicted. Mile markers 16 through 18, 2 full miles of reversed time, and the vehicles that had been trapped at the edges were now deeper inside, their occupants aging backwards faster, losing more years with each passing hour. I'd stayed on scene through the night, refusing to go home even when my shift ended. Sergeant Kowalski had tried to send me to the hospital for observation, but I'd refused that too. I needed to be here, needed to understand what was happening. Dr. Sarah Chen was still inside, still holding up notes, but the notes were changing, becoming simpler, childlike handwriting replacing her precise academic script. I'm 28 now, forgetting grad school. Help. She'd lost 14 years in 12 hours. At this rate, she'd be a child by afternoon. The specialists had set up a command center in the Lee Barracks parking lot, bringing in equipment I didn't recognize, computers displaying data I couldn't interpret. The federal agent from last night, I'd learned her name was Agent Torres, was coordinating with what looked like every 3-letter agency in the government. Around 7 a.m., Torres called me over to her mobile command unit. Trooper Sullivan, we need to ask you some questions. You spent 90 minutes inside the temporal inversion zone last night. We need to understand what you experienced. I already told you everything. We need more detail, specifically about your age regression. She pulled up a photo on her tablet. This is your driver's license photo from last month. I looked at the image. 42-year-old Ryan Sullivan, the lines of middle age clear on my face. Then she held up a mirror. Look at yourself now. I did. The face looking back at me was younger. Not drastically, but noticeably. Maybe 38, 39. The gray in my hair had reduced. The crow's feet around my eyes had softened. I looked like I had 4 years ago. You've lost approximately 4 years, Torres said. Same rate as Dr. Chen. 1.3 years per hour of exposure. But here's what's interesting. You left the zone 12 hours ago, and you haven't continued to age backwards. The effect stopped when you exited. So it's contained to the zone? For now, but the zone is growing, and we've discovered something else. She pulled up a map on her tablet, showing the mass pike with the affected area highlighted. We found records of an incident at this exact location, October 23, 1991, exactly 10 years ago today. What kind of incident? Hazmat spill. A truck carrying experimental materials from a defense contractor crashed at mile marker 17. The materials were classified, but from what we've been able to piece together, they were working on temporal displacement technology. Theoretical physics research funded by DARPA. Temporal displacement. Time travel? More like time manipulation. Creating bubbles where time moves faster or slower than the outside world. Military applications, you can imagine. Age weapons at accelerated rates, train soldiers in compressed time. But the research was shut down because they couldn't control it. The materials from that crash were supposed to be cleaned up and contained. Clearly they weren't. Clearly. And now, 10 years later, to the day, something's activated. Maybe the materials degraded, reached some critical threshold. Maybe it's just coincidence. But whatever's happening, it started at ground zero of that 1991 spill. I thought about Dr. Chen, losing years by the hour. Is there any way to reverse this? To stop the temporal inversion? Torres looked grim. We're working on theories. MIT has their best quantum physicists on it. But the honest answer, we don't know. This is unprecedented. Time doesn't just run backwards. It's not supposed to be possible. Well, it's happening. And if it keeps doubling, if it reaches Boston, we know. We're preparing evacuation protocols for western Massachusetts. But if it continues at this rate, we'd need to evacuate the entire Northeast in less than a week. She showed me a projection on her tablet. Day 1, 1 mile. Day 2, 2 miles. Day 3, 4 miles. Day 4, 8 miles. Day 5, 16 miles. Day 6, 32 miles. Day 7, 64 miles. By day 10, the backward zone would stretch from Boston to Buffalo. We have maybe 72 hours before this reaches major population centers, Torres said. And if it continues beyond that, if it reaches New York City, we're looking at tens of millions of people aging backwards. Children becoming infants, infants becoming nothing. Nothing? If you age backwards past birth, past conception, what happens? You cease to have ever existed. You're erased from time. Everyone who knew you would forget you. Every impact you had on the world would undo itself. It's not death, Trooper Sullivan. It's worse than death. It's retroactive non-existence. I felt sick. Emma was in Wellesley, about 130 miles east of here. At the current rate of expansion, the backward zone would reach her in about 90 hours. Less than 4 days. What can I do? We need someone to go in, to the center of the inversion, ground zero at mile marker 17. We need to understand what's causing this, and we need someone who's already been exposed to the temporal effect. Someone whose biology has adapted to it. You want me to go back in there? You're the only one who's been in and come out. Dr. Chen is trapped. The other civilians who entered are trapped. But you found your way out, which means you might be able to navigate to the center and back. And when I get there, what am I looking for? Whatever's generating the inversion. The remains of the 1991 spill, some kind of device, anything that might be acting as an anchor point. If we can identify it, maybe we can shut it down. And if I can't, if I get trapped like Dr. Chen? Torres met my eyes. Then you'll age backwards until you cease to exist, and we'll have lost our best chance at stopping this. I thought about Emma, about Michelle's promise to take her to Buffalo. At least she'd be safe, at least for a few more days. But what about everyone else? All the people between here and New York? All the children who'd be erased from existence? I'll do it, I said. But I need a way to communicate. Radio doesn't work in there. We're working on that. MIT is rigging up a system using quantum entanglement. Theoretically, it should work even in temporally inverted space. Give us 2 hours. 2 hours. By then, it would be mid-morning. The backward zone would have grown another few hundred feet. Every minute counted. I spent those 2 hours trying to sleep in my patrol car, but couldn't. Instead, I thought about Emma, about all the moments I'd missed in her life because of this job, her first steps, her first day of school, her first heartbreak. I'd been chasing criminals or working overtime while she was growing up, and now I was about to literally grow backwards, potentially losing all those memories. The irony wasn't lost on me. Around 9 a.m., Torres found me. We're ready. The communications device is experimental, but it should work. You'll wear this. She handed me what looked like a chunky watch. It's not actually a watch. It's a quantum-entangled transmitter. Whatever you say into it, we'll hear here. And whatever we say, you'll hear. Time doesn't matter to quantum entanglement. I thought quantum entanglement couldn't actually transmit information. Officially, it can't. But DARPA's been working around that limitation for years. This is classified tech, about 20 years ahead of what the public knows about. I strapped on the device. Anything else I should know? Yes. Based on our calculations, if you enter now and head to the center at mile marker 17, you'll be inside the backward zone for approximately 4 hours round trip. That's 5 years of reverse aging. You're 42 now. You'll be 37 when you come out. Maybe younger if you spend extra time at the epicenter. 5 years, I can handle that. Physically, yes. But mentally, you'll start losing memories. Nothing critical, probably just the most recent ones. But Trooper Sullivan, you need to understand. If you age back past your daughter's birth, you won't remember her. She'll cease to exist in your memory. Emma was 16, born in 1985. If I aged back to 1984 or earlier, I'd lose her. The thought was unbearable. Then I'd better work fast. Torres handed me a small device, about the size of a smartphone. This is a temporal scanner. Point it at anything that looks like it might be generating the inversion. It'll tell us what we're dealing with. I took the scanner, checked my service weapon, though what good a gun would do against reverse time, I had no idea, and headed toward the backward zone. The boundary was clearly visible now. A shimmering line in the air like heat distortion, marking the point where normal time ended and reverse time began. On one side, rain fell down. On the other side, it fell up. I took a deep breath and stepped across. Immediately, everything reversed. The sounds of the command center behind me became backwards gibberish. My own breathing reversed direction, air flowing out when I tried to inhale, flowing in when I tried to exhale. It was disorienting, nauseating, but the quantum watch worked. Torres's voice came through clearly. "Sullivan, can you hear me?" "Yeah, I hear you. I'm through the boundary, heading toward mile marker 17. The highway was surreal. Cars sat abandoned, some with their engines running in reverse, exhaust being sucked back into tailpipes instead of expelled. I passed Dr. Chen's Honda. She was sitting in the back seat, and when she saw me, she held up a note. "I'm 22 now. Don't remember my PhD. Help me. 8 more years gone." She was regressing into a college student, losing her education, her career, her adult life piece by piece. "I'm working on it," I said, though I knew she couldn't hear me. In reversed time, my words would sound like gibberish to her. I kept walking west toward the center. With each step, I felt that cold wave passing through me again and again. My body getting lighter, my joints feeling better, the chronic back pain I'd lived with for years fading away. I was getting younger. After 30 minutes of walking, I reached what had to be close to the epicenter. Mile marker 17. And there, in the center of the westbound lanes, I saw it. A crater. Not from a recent accident, but an old one. The asphalt had been patched over, but I could see the outline where something had impacted hard enough to damage the road 10 years ago. And in the center of the crater, barely visible beneath the patched asphalt, something was glowing. A faint blue light, pulsing slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. "Torres, I found something. Center of the road, mile marker 17. There's something under the pavement, glowing blue. Can you get to it?" I looked around. There were maintenance tools in one of the abandoned vehicles, including a crowbar. I grabbed it and started prying up the asphalt patch. Underneath, I found them. Containers. Maybe a dozen of them, each about the size of a soda can, made of some kind of metallic material I didn't recognize. They'd been buried here, left behind when the road was repaired after the 1991 accident. And they were all glowing, pulsing in sync, like they were connected to something deeper. "Torres, I've got containers here. Metallic, glowing, synchronized pulse. This has to be what's generating the inversion. Scan them with the device." I pulled out the temporal scanner and pointed it at the containers. The screen lit up with data I couldn't fully understand, but one number was clear. Temporal displacement field, exponential growth pattern. It's confirmed. These are the source. What do I do? There was a pause, voices in the background, hurried discussion. Then Torres came back on. Sullivan, we need you to bring one out, just one container. We need to study it, understand how it works. Can you carry one? I reached down and touched one of the containers. It was cold, impossibly cold, like touching liquid nitrogen, but it wasn't freezing my hand. Instead, I felt time flowing around it, through it, backwards and backwards and backwards. I grabbed the crowbar and carefully pried one of the containers free from whatever was holding it in place. The moment I did, I felt the temporal field shift, intensify. The other containers started pulsing faster. Torres, I've got one, but pulling it out made the others more active. The field is getting stronger. Get out of there, now. Bring the container back to the boundary. We'll study it here. I wrapped the container in my jacket to insulate it and started back east, toward the boundary, toward normal time. But walking was harder now. The temporal inversion was stronger, pulling me backwards, pulling me toward younger and younger. I checked my watch, the normal watch on my other wrist. 60 minutes had passed since I entered. I should have aged backward maybe 18 months, but I felt different. Lighter than that. I pulled out a small mirror I kept in my pocket. The face looking back at me was 38, maybe 37. I'd lost 5 years, maybe more. The temporal field at the epicenter was stronger than anyone had calculated. Torres, I think the center is more concentrated. I've already lost 5 years. Keep moving, Sullivan. You need to get out before... Her voice cut off. Not faded, not distorted. Just stopped. I looked at the quantum watch. The screen was dark. Dead. No, not dead. Running backwards. The battery charge indicator was increasing instead of decreasing. The watch itself was aging backwards, returning to a state before it had been turned on. I was on my own. I kept walking, fighting against the temporal current. Every step forward felt like walking through deep water. And with each step I felt more years peeling away. 40, 39, 38, 37, 36. Memories started to feel distant. My divorce from Michelle felt recent instead of 3 years ago. Emma as a teenager felt less vivid. Emma as a child felt more present. I was regressing, not just physically but mentally. Emma, I said out loud, trying to hold on to her. Emma Sullivan, born 1985. She's 16. She likes music. She wants to study English at BU. She's mad at me for choosing work over family. But the memories were slipping. I could recall the facts, but the feelings were fading. The guilt I'd carried for 3 years was lessening, not because I'd forgiven myself, but because I was moving backwards toward a time before the guilt existed. I saw the boundary ahead, that shimmering line between reversed time and normal time, maybe 200 yards away. But I felt so young now, 35, maybe younger. I'd lost almost 8 years. I was approaching the age I'd been when Emma was born. If I lost much more, I'd lose her completely. I ran. The temporal current fought me, but I pushed through, holding the cold container against my chest, feeling it pull time backwards around me, through me. 34, 33, 32. Memories of Emma's early years crystal clear now. First steps, first words, first day of kindergarten. But her teenage years? Fuzzy, distant. Had she been mad at me recently? I couldn't quite remember. 100 yards to the boundary. Torres and her team were there, waving, shouting. I couldn't hear them over the backwards roar of reversed time. 31, 30. I was younger than I'd been when I married Michelle. Our wedding felt like it hadn't happened yet. Emma felt like a future possibility rather than a present reality. 50 yards. And then I felt something else. The container in my jacket was getting warmer. Not room temperature warm. Hot. Like it was reacting to approaching normal time, like matter and antimatter preparing to collide. Torres was screaming something, waving her arms. But I couldn't hear her, 20 yards. The container started to pulse faster, the blue light bleeding through my jacket. And I understood too late what was about to happen. These containers had been designed to create temporal displacement fields, and I'd pulled one out of reversed time and was about to bring it into normal time. What happens when an object from backwards time meets an object from forward time? 10 yards. The container exploded, not with fire or force, but with time. A wave of temporal energy burst from it, washing over me, through me, around me. For a moment I existed in all times at once. I was 42 and 30 and 16 and 6 and newborn and unborn. I saw my entire life forwards and backwards simultaneously. I saw Emma grow up and grow down. I saw Michelle age and youth. I saw myself become a trooper and unbecome one. And then the wave passed, and I collapsed across the boundary into normal time. Torres and her team grabbed me, pulled me away from the shimmering line. Someone was checking my pulse, my breathing. Someone else was shouting for a medic. I tried to sit up. Did we stop it? Torres's face appeared above me, and her expression told me everything. Sullivan, what year do you think it is? 2001, October 23rd. And how old do you think you are? I thought about it, calculated. I'm 30. No, wait, 32? I'm not sure. You're 28 years old, Sullivan. You lost 14 years. You aged backward past your daughter's birth. I have a daughter? The words came out before I could stop them, and that's when I knew. I'd lost Emma. Not just the memory of her teenage years, but all of her. In my mind, she'd never been born. Michelle and I were still newlyweds, planning for children but not having them yet. 16 years of my daughter's life, gone, erased from my memory by backwards time. Torres was talking, explaining something about the container destabilizing the temporal field, about how the backward zone had jumped from 2 miles to 4 miles in an instant, how it was still growing. But I couldn't focus on her words. Because somewhere in Massachusetts there was a 16-year-old girl named Emma Sullivan who thought I was her father, and I couldn't remember her at all. Day 3. The backwards zone stretched 8 miles, mile markers 10 through 18. I sat in the medical tent trying to remember a daughter I'd never known. They'd shown me photos. A 16-year-old girl with my eyes and Michelle's smile. My wife, ex-wife, they kept correcting me, but in my memory we were still married, had driven Emma here from Wellesley, defying my warning to go to Buffalo. Dad? The girl stood at the tent entrance, uncertain. They said that you don't remember me. I looked at her, tried to find something familiar, some echo of recognition. But she was a stranger. A beautiful stranger who apparently was my daughter. I'm sorry, I said. I lost 14 years. In my memory, you haven't been born yet. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Michelle, standing behind her, put a hand on her shoulder. The doctor said your memories might come back, Michelle said. Her face was older than I remembered, lines I didn't recognize. Once the temporal effects stabilize, but I could see in her eyes she didn't believe it. Neither did I. Emma turned and left. Michelle followed, and I sat alone with photos of a life I couldn't recall. Agent Torres entered. Sullivan, we need to talk. The situation's deteriorated. Worse than losing my daughter? Much worse. She pulled up footage on her tablet. This morning, we had our first unborn. The video showed a young man, maybe 25, being led out of the backward zone by hazmat-suited responders. He looked disoriented, scared. The timestamp showed 7:43 a.m. Then the footage jumped to 8:02 a.m. The man was sitting in a medical chair, and he looked younger. 16, maybe 17. Terrified, crying, asking for his mother. 8:31 a.m. He looked 12. Sitting in a hospital bed, confused, asking where he was. 9:15 a.m. He looked 6. Playing with toys, seemingly unaware of where he was. 9:58 a.m. An infant crying in a hospital crib, 10:22 a.m. A fetus-sized bundle, barely moving. 10:33 a.m. The bundle was empty. The blanket lay flat. He ceased to exist, Torres said quietly. Aged backwards past conception, past fertilization. Everyone who knew him reports feeling like they're forgetting him. His parents called an hour ago asking why we were calling them about their son. They don't remember ever having a son. I felt sick. How many others? 3 more today, all people who were trapped in the zone from the beginning. They've been aging backwards for over 60 hours. Anyone who stays in there longer than 3 days ceases to exist. Dr. Chen? We got her out this morning. She's 14 years old now, doesn't remember her doctorate, barely remembers high school. But she's alive. She has maybe 12 hours before... Torres trailed off. Before she's unborn. Yes. I stood up, my younger body feeling strange, unfamiliar. What's the evacuation status? We've cleared everything within the current 8-mile radius, but at the rate it's expanding, it'll reach Pittsfield by tomorrow morning, Albany by tomorrow night, Boston in 3 days. And beyond that? Models show complete East Coast coverage in 7 days, full hemisphere in 10 days, global in 2 weeks. 2 weeks until everyone on Earth is unborn. Not everyone. The effect weakens with distance from the epicenter. But everyone within 200 miles would be gone. That's 50 million people just in the Northeast. I looked at the photos of Emma again. This girl I didn't know, who I'd apparently raised, who I'd apparently loved, who I'd lost to backwards time. There has to be a way to stop it. There is. Torres pulled up a schematic. Dr. Chen, before she regressed too far, worked out the mathematics. The temporal inversion is anchored to those containers at mile marker 17. They're generating a feedback loop, pulling energy from the time stream, using it to expand the field. It's self-sustaining, self-amplifying. Can we destroy them? No. Any conventional attack would just release more temporal energy, accelerate the expansion. But there's another option. She zoomed in on the schematic. Someone needs to go to the exact center, to the epicenter where all the containers are, and essentially absorb the temporal field. Absorb it? What does that mean? Become the anchor point yourself. Let the backwards time flow through you instead of out into the world. It would stop the expansion immediately. The field would stabilize, even start to contract as it drains into the human anchor. And what happens to that person? Torres met my eyes. They age backwards past conception, past existence. But unlike the others, who simply cease to be, the anchor would carry the temporal energy with them into non-existence. They'd be erased, but they'd take the inversion with them. A sacrifice. Yes, I thought about Emma, about Michelle. about all the memories I'd lost and all the people who'd lose everything if the backwards mile kept expanding. How long would it take to absorb the field? Based on the calculations, about 2 hours. You'd age backwards from wherever you are now, 28 physically, through infancy, through birth, through unbirth. You'd experience your entire life in reverse, and then you'd be gone, and the backwards mile would collapse. Why me? Because you've already been exposed twice. Your biology has partially adapted to the temporal field. Anyone else who tried would be torn apart instantly. But you might survive long enough to complete the absorption. I looked at the photos of Emma one more time. A life I couldn't remember, with a daughter I'd never known. Maybe I'd get to know her in reverse. Maybe, as I aged backwards, I'd regain those lost memories. Maybe in my final moments, I'd remember what it was like to be her father. "I'll do it," I said. They gave me 4 hours to prepare. I used 1 hour to sleep, 1 hour to eat a final meal, and 2 hours sitting with Emma and Michelle, trying to explain why I had to do this. "I don't remember you," I told Emma, "but they tell me I loved you more than anything, that you were my reason for everything. And if that's true, then this is easy. I'm saving you, even if I can't remember why you matter." Emma was crying. "This isn't fair." "Life rarely is, sweetheart." Michelle held my hand. "Will it hurt?" "I don't know. Maybe. But I've been hurt before." At 6 p.m., I walked back toward the backward zone. It had grown to 16 miles now. The expansion was accelerating. Torres walked with me to the boundary. "Sullivan, when you cross over, head straight for the epicenter. Don't stop, don't hesitate. The faster you reach the center, the less you'll age before the absorption begins." "How will I know when it starts?" "You'll know. Dr. Chen described it as feeling like you're being pulled inside out through time. Not painful," she said. "Just inevitable. Comforting, Ryan." She used my first name for the first time. "What you're doing." There should be a medal for this. A monument, but there won't be, because once you're gone, once you're unborn, nobody will remember you did it. I know. Your daughter will forget you. Your ex-wife will forget you. It'll be like you never existed. I know. Then why? I thought about it. Because even if nobody remembers, it still matters. The doing matters. The choice matters. And somewhere, in some version of time, Emma will grow up. She'll go to college. She'll fall in love. She'll have children. And it'll be because I chose to walk backwards. Torres nodded. "Walk in beauty, Trooper Sullivan." "How did you?" "I know some Navajo. Seemed appropriate." I stepped across the boundary into backwards time. The familiar sensation of reversal washed over me, and I started toward the epicenter, toward mile marker 17, toward the glowing containers that would be my last memory. As I walked, I felt time peeling away. 28 became 27, 26, 25. My body got smaller, younger. My uniform hung loose on my shrinking frame. And something else happened. Memories started coming back. Not recent memories, but old ones. Emma as a baby, Emma being born, Michelle pregnant, our wedding. I was aging backwards through my life, and as I did, I was remembering it in reverse. 20, 19, 18. High school. My father teaching me to drive. My mother's laugh. 15, 14, 13. Middle school. First crush. First heartbreak. By the time I reached the epicenter, I was physically 10 years old. My adult clothes in a pile around my tiny body. But I was remembering everything now, the full sweep of my life playing in reverse. The containers pulsed before me, and I reached out with a child's hand to touch them. The absorption began. Time flowed into me, through me, backwards and backwards. I became younger, smaller, 5 years old, 3 years old, an infant. And in those final moments, as I aged, past birth, past conception, past existence, I remembered Emma, not as a 16-year-old stranger, but as my daughter. All of her, every moment, every laugh and tear and hug. I'd gotten my memories back just in time to lose everything. The last thing I remember is Emma's voice, from some point in the future I'd never see. "I love you too, Dad." And then I was gone, and the backwards mile collapsed. And nobody remembered Trooper Ryan Sullivan except in dreams they couldn't explain and déjà vu they couldn't place. Somewhere in Massachusetts, Michelle Sullivan woke up feeling like she'd lost something important, but couldn't remember what. And Emma, now a 16-year-old girl who'd grown up with a single mother, wondered why she sometimes cried at night for a father she'd never had. The price of salvation is forgetting, but I'd paid it gladly. The moment Ryan Sullivan ceased to exist, reality shuddered. Agent Torres felt it first, a wave of something passing through her, cold and absolute like the universe itself was exhaling. She was standing at the boundary of the backward zone, watching the shimmering line that separated normal time from reversed time when it happened. The shimmer flickered, pulsed, and then, like a soap bubble finally giving up its surface tension, it collapsed inward. The backwards zone didn't shrink gradually. It imploded. 16 miles of reversed time folded in on themselves, racing toward the epicenter at mile marker 17, pulling everything backwards into a single point of impossible density. And then, nothing. The rain, which had been falling upward for 3 days, suddenly reversed course and began falling down again. The abandoned vehicles that had been driving in eternal reverse rolled to a stop, their engines dying, their drivers, those who hadn't been unborn, slumping forward in confusion. Torres grabbed her radio. "All units, the temporal field has collapsed. I repeat, the field has collapsed. Begin recovery operations immediately." But even as she spoke, she felt something else. A gap in her memory, like a word on the tip of her tongue that she couldn't quite recall. She'd been working with someone on this operation. A state trooper. Local guy, knew the area. What was his name? She couldn't remember. She pulled out her tablet, scrolling through the operation logs. There were references to a primary field operative, but no name attached. Entries that said things like, "Operative entered zone at 1800 hours," and "Operative reached epicenter at 1847 hours," but no identification. Torres walked to the medical tent where the recovered civilians were being treated. Dr. Sarah Chen was there, now physically 14 years old, wrapped in blankets, looking terrified and confused. She'd lost 24 years of her life. Her doctorate, her career, her adult memories, all gone. "Dr. Chen, can you tell me what happened at the epicenter?" The teenage girl looked up with eyes too old for her face. Someone absorbed it. Someone took all the temporal energy into themselves. I saw it happening, from inside the zone. A figure made of light, pulling all the backwards time into their body, and then they were gone, and the zone collapsed. "Do you remember who it was?" Chen frowned, concentrating. "A man, I think, in a uniform, police maybe. He talked to me earlier when he first found me. But I can't—" She shook her head. "I can't remember his face or his name. It's like trying to remember a dream that's already fading." Torres nodded. She was experiencing the same thing. They all were. Someone had sacrificed themselves to stop the backwards mile. Someone had walked into the heart of reversed time and absorbed it, been unborn, erased from existence so completely that even their memory was being pulled out of the world. But who? In Wellesley, Massachusetts, Michelle Sullivan woke up at 6:47 a.m. with tears on her face and no idea why. She'd been dreaming, she knew that much. A vivid dream about a man in a state police uniform, holding her hand, telling her everything would be okay. But when she tried to recall his face, it slipped away like water through her fingers. Her daughter Emma was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. "Mom, did you have a weird dream too?" Michelle sat down across from her. "Yes, about a man. Someone important, I think. But I can't remember who." Emma, 16 years old, pushed a photograph across the table. "I found this in your jewelry box last year. I was looking for earrings to borrow. I never asked you about it because, I don't know, it felt private." The photograph showed a man in his 30s, wearing a Massachusetts State Police uniform, squinting slightly in bright sunlight. He was smiling, but there was something sad in his eyes, something that suggested he knew things weren't going to turn out the way he hoped. Michelle picked up the photograph, and for a moment, just a moment, she felt something. A connection, a recognition, a memory trying to surface. But then it was gone, and she was looking at a stranger. "I don't know who this is," she said. "I don't remember taking this picture or keeping it, but I must have had a reason." Emma took the photograph back. "I feel like I know him, like he's important, but I can't explain why." They sat in silence, mother and daughter, mourning someone they couldn't remember. Over the following days, more evidence surfaced. A second toothbrush in Michelle's bathroom that she couldn't explain. Men's clothes in a closet that didn't fit anyone she knew. A pair of state police boots in the garage, worn and comfortable, clearly belonging to someone who'd walked many miles in them. And the dreams. Every night, both of them dreamed about the same man, teaching Emma to ride a bike, dancing with Michelle at what might have been a wedding, sitting in a patrol car, talking on the radio, driving through mountains at night. But when they woke, the details evaporated. All that remained was a sense of loss, heavy and inexplicable. Michelle called the Massachusetts State Police headquarters, asking if they had any record of a trooper named Sullivan. They found her own name in the system. She'd apparently been married to a trooper for 12 years before divorcing him 3 years ago. But when she asked for his first name, for his badge number, for any identifying information, the records were blank. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the clerk said. "According to our files, you were married to someone, and he was a trooper, but we have no name, no photo, no personnel file. It's like he was deleted from the system, but the deletion wasn't quite complete." "How is that possible?" "I don't know. I've never seen anything like it." "Are you sure you were actually married? Maybe you're misremembering?" But Michelle had the divorce papers. Legal documents that referenced her husband as the party of the first part, without ever using his name. A marriage certificate that had her signature and a blank space where his should have been. He had existed. She was certain of it. But existence itself had forgotten him. The years passed, and the forgetting continued. By the first anniversary of the incident, Michelle could no longer recall the dreams. The photograph of the unknown trooper went into a box in the attic, too painful to look at but impossible to throw away. The men's clothes were donated to Goodwill. The second toothbrush was discarded. But some things couldn't be erased. Emma grew up with a persistent sense of absence, like a phantom limb for a father she'd never had. She excelled in school, driven by something she couldn't name, and when it came time to choose a career, she found herself drawn inexplicably to law enforcement. "It's strange," she told her mother, when she announced her decision to apply to the State Police Academy. "I've never been interested in being a cop, but lately I can't stop thinking about it. like someone's whispering in my ear that this is what I'm supposed to do. Michelle felt a chill when Emma said that. A whisper, a suggestion from somewhere beyond memory. "If it feels right, you should do it," she said. "Trust your instincts." Emma graduated from the academy in 2010, 9 years after the backward smile. She requested assignment to the Western Massachusetts section of I-90, specifically the stretch that ran through the Berkshire Mountains. She couldn't explain why. It just felt important. Her first night on patrol, driving past mile marker 17, she pulled over and got out of her car. The autumn air was cold, the mountains dark and silent. There was nothing unusual about this stretch of highway. No memorial, no marker, no indication that anything significant had ever happened here. But Emma felt something, a resonance, like standing in a place where something important had occurred, even if you didn't know what. She started investigating. It wasn't easy. The government had done a thorough job of covering up the backward smile. Official records showed a chemical spill, quickly contained. News reports from October 2001 mentioned a brief highway closure, but nothing more. The witnesses had either forgotten what they'd seen or had been convinced to keep quiet. But Emma was persistent. She tracked down Dr. Sarah Chen, now in her 30s again. She'd slowly re-aged after the incident, her body catching up to the years she'd lost. Chen remembered more than most, perhaps because she'd been so close to the epicenter. "There was a trooper," Chen told Emma over coffee in a Cambridge cafe. "He came into the zone to find me, talked to me, tried to help me escape. But then he went deeper, toward the center, and when the zone collapsed, he was gone. I can't remember his face or his name, but I know he existed. I know he saved us. Do you know what happened to him? He was unborn, absorbed the temporal field and took it with him into non-existence. That's why we can't remember him. When you're unborn, you're erased not just from the present, but from memory itself. It's like you were never there, but you remember that someone was there. I remember the shape of him, the absence where he should be, like a hole in reality that my mind keeps trying to fill." Chen paused, studying Emma's face. "You have the same eyes." "What?" "As him, the trooper. I can't remember his face, but I remember his eyes. And you have them. Are you related to someone in the state police?" Emma felt her heart racing. "My mother was married to a trooper. They divorced when I was 13, but I don't remember him. No one does." Chen's expression shifted. "Then maybe you should. Maybe that's why you're here asking these questions. Maybe some part of you remembers what the rest of us have forgotten." Over the next 3 years, Emma pieced together fragments of the truth. She found the classified files buried in archives that weren't supposed to exist. Reports of a temporal anomaly event at mile marker 17. References to something called Protocol Unborn that was enacted when a volunteer absorbed the temporal field. Mentions of a primary operative whose name had been redacted not by human hands, but by the erasure itself. Blank spaces in documents where his identity should have been. She found witnesses who remembered fragments. A sergeant named Kowalski who recalled working with someone during the incident, but couldn't say who. An environmental tech named Marcus who remembered seeing rain fall upward and vehicles drive backward. A federal agent named Torres who had detailed logs of the operation, but no memory of the operative who'd actually carried it out. "I know I was working with someone," Torres told Emma when she tracked her down. "The logs reference him constantly. But when I try to remember his face, his voice, anything about him as a person, there's nothing. It's the strangest feeling, like mourning a ghost." And Emma found the personal effects. In a storage locker that had been maintained for 19 years by Automatic payments from an account that no longer had a name attached to it. She discovered boxes of someone's life. A state police uniform with a name tag that was blank. Photographs of a family, Emma as a child, her mother younger and happier, with a figure standing beside them who was nothing but static, a human-shaped blur that cameras couldn't capture. In one box she found a notebook. The handwriting was strong and clear, obviously masculine, but the signature at the end of each entry was missing, not crossed out, just absent, as if the person who'd written it had never had a name. The entries were from the days leading up to October 23, 2001. October 20th. Emma still won't talk to me. 3 years since the divorce and she can't even say she loves me. I know I deserve it. I chose the job too many times, but it doesn't make it hurt less. October 21st. Worked a double shift. Michelle called to say Emma got into a fight at school. She defended some kid who was being bullied. That's my girl, even if she doesn't want to be. October 22nd. Night shift tomorrow. I'm going to call Emma before I leave, try to say goodnight. Maybe this time she'll say it back. October 23rd. The rest of the page was blank, except for a single word that was barely visible, as if it had been written and then unwritten, goodbye. Emma sat in that storage locker for hours, reading and rereading the notebook entries, crying for a father she couldn't remember, but whose love was documented in every line. He had existed. He had loved her, and he had given up everything, not just his life, but his very existence, so that she could live. October 23, 2020, 19 years to the day. Emma drove to mile marker 17 alone. It was 11:30 p.m., the same time her father had first encountered the backward zone. The night was cold, the first real frost of the season forming on the windshield. She parked on the shoulder and got out, standing in the darkness, looking at an ordinary stretch of highway. There was nothing here now. No shimmer, no reversed rain, no temporal anomaly. Just pavement and trees and mountains. But Emma could feel something. A presence, maybe. Or an absence. The shape of a man who should have been standing beside her. She pulled out the photograph. The one from her mother's jewelry box, the one she'd been carrying for years. The man in the state police uniform, squinting and smiling. Unknowable, but familiar. "Hi, Dad," she said to the empty night. "I know you can't hear me. I know you're not here. Not anywhere, really. But I had to come. I had to try." The wind picked up. Cold October wind carrying the scent of fallen leaves and coming winter. "I've been investigating you for years. Not you exactly, because there's no you to investigate, but the shape you left behind, the hole in the world where you used to be." She paused, fighting back tears. "I found your notebook, the entries before you died, before you were unborn. And Dad, I need you to know, I remember now, not the specifics, not your face or your voice, but I remember feeling angry at you. I remember a phone call where you said you loved me, and I didn't say it back. And I've spent 19 years carrying that guilt without knowing why." The wind died down. The night was suddenly, impossibly still. "I'm a trooper now, working your stretch of highway. I don't know if that was my choice or if some part of me that remembers you pushed me toward it. But I'm here, Dad. I'm carrying on what you started." Emma looked down at the photograph, at the unrecognizable face, and spoke the words she'd never gotten to say. "I love you. I should have said it that night. I should have said it every day. But I was 16 and angry and stupid, and I thought I had all the time in the world. I didn't know that time could run backwards. I didn't know you could be erased from existence. I didn't know that some losses are so complete that even memory can't hold them." She wiped her eyes. "I'm saying it now. 19 years too late. to a father who can't hear me, who doesn't exist, who never existed according to the universe. But I'm saying it anyway. I love you, Dad. I love you. The stillness broke, and something happened. On the pavement, right where the epicenter had been, a blue light began to glow. Faint at first, barely visible, but growing stronger with each pulse. It was the same light that had been described in the classified files, the temporal signature of the containers that had caused the backward smile. But this wasn't coming from buried containers. This was coming from nowhere. From the space between moments, from the quantum foam that underlaid reality itself. And in the light, a figure began to form. He wasn't solid, he wasn't even fully visible, just an outline, a suggestion, a memory trying to become real. But Emma knew immediately who it was. "Dad?" The figure flickered, stabilized slightly. She could see details now, the uniform, the badge, the same build and posture as the man in the photograph. But his face was still indistinct, wavering like a reflection in disturbed water. When he spoke, the words didn't come from his mouth. They came from everywhere. From the wind, from the pavement, from Emma's own memories. "Emma, you're here. You're actually here. Not here. Not anywhere. I'm the echo of a choice, the last vibration of the existence that was erased. But tonight, on the anniversary, when you spoke, when you said the words I needed to hear, something resonated. Something pushed back against the erasure just for a moment. How is this possible? Love transcends time. That's not just a saying, it's physics, quantum entanglement. The connections we form with people, the bonds of family and love, they create patterns in reality that can't be completely erased. When you said you loved me, when you really felt it, that pattern vibrated, and I could push through just for a moment. Emma stepped closer. I've been looking for you. For years. I found your notebook, your storage locker, your files. I know. I've been not watching exactly. More like feeling. When you think about me, when you investigate me, when you carry that photograph, I feel it. Like warmth from a distant fire. It's the only thing I feel anymore. Are you in pain? Are you suffering? No. There's no pain in non-existence. There's no anything. But there's also awareness somehow. A consciousness that persists even when everything else is gone. I exist as a possibility that was rejected. A branch that was pruned. But the root is still there, in you, in Michelle, in everyone I loved. Mom doesn't remember you at all. She cries sometimes, but she doesn't know why. Tell her, show her the notebook, the photograph, the storage locker. She won't remember, but she'll know. And knowing is almost as good as remembering. Emma was crying openly now. I don't want you to go. I just found you. You found me 19 years ago, sweetheart. You just didn't know it. Every time you felt an unexplained sadness, every time you cried for no reason, every time you looked at that photograph and felt something you couldn't name, that was me. That was the bond between us, still vibrating, still real. Will I see you again? Maybe, on anniversaries, when the walls between existence and non-existence get thin. But Emma, don't wait for me. Don't spend your life mourning a ghost. Live. That's what I bought with my sacrifice. Your life, your future, your happiness. Don't waste it looking backward. The figure was fading, the blue light dimming. Dad, wait, I need to ask you something. Ask. In the zone, when you were aging backward, did you remember me? Before you were erased, did you know who I was? The figure's outline smiled. Emma could see it clearly now, just for a moment. her father's face, the face she'd been trying to remember for 19 years. I remembered everything, every moment, every hug, every bedtime story, every time you rolled your eyes at my bad jokes. I got it all back, Emma. The backward aging restored my memories even as it took my years. And in my final moment, when I was about to be unborn, I heard something. Your voice. From the future, saying the words you just said tonight. I love you? Yes. The words traveled backward through time, through the temporal field, and reached me at the exact moment I needed to hear them. You saved me, Emma. Not from being erased. Nothing could stop that. But from being erased without knowing that my daughter loved me. The light flickered out. The figure dissolved into the darkness. But Emma heard one more thing, faint and fading, more feeling than sound. I love you too, sweetheart. I always will. Across all of time, forwards and backwards, I'll always love you. And then he was gone. Emma stood alone on the highway in the cold October night, holding a photograph of a man whose face she could finally remember. She drove home as the sun rose, the Massachusetts Turnpike transforming from dark highway to morning commute. Ordinary people in ordinary cars, going to ordinary jobs, unaware that they existed because a trooper had walked backward through time 19 years ago. Emma thought about what her father had said. Live. Don't spend your life looking backward. He was right. She'd spent years investigating his erasure, mourning his non-existence, trying to fill the gap he'd left behind. And while that search had brought her to this moment, had given her the closure she needed, it was time to move forward. She stopped at her mother's house before going home. Michelle was awake, making coffee, and she looked up with surprise when Emma walked in. Sweetheart, is everything okay? Emma set the notebook on the kitchen table, the notebook from the storage locker filled with her father's handwriting. I found him, Mom. I found Dad. Michelle looked at the notebook, then at Emma. I don't remember. I know. You won't remember, but you'll know. Emma opened the notebook to the first entry. Read this. Read all of it, and then I'll tell you everything I've discovered. He existed, Mom. He loved us, and he gave up everything so we could be here, right now, having this conversation. Michelle picked up the notebook with trembling hands. As she began to read, tears started falling, tears for a man she couldn't remember but whose love was documented on every page. Emma sat with her mother, and together they mourned the man who had been erased from existence. They couldn't remember his face, his voice, his laugh, but they could feel his absence, and they could know his sacrifice, and that was enough. Later, Emma would tell her own children about their grandfather. Not a story about a ghost or a photograph or a mystery, but a story about love. About a man who chose to walk backward through time to give up his own existence so that his daughter could live and grow and have children of her own. Your grandfather was a hero, she would tell them. Not the kind of hero who saves the world and gets medals and monuments, the kind of hero who makes impossible choices, who sacrifices everything, who is forgotten by everyone except the people who love him. And her children would ask, what was his name? And Emma would pause because she could never quite remember. The erasure had taken that too, taken even the memory of what to call him. But then she would say, his name doesn't matter. What matters is what he did. He loved us so much that he let himself be erased so we could exist. And as long as we remember that love, as long as we carry it forward, he's still here. Not in memory, not in photographs, not in records, but in us, in our choices, in our love for each other. The backward smile was gone. The temporal inversion was resolved. The man who had stopped it was erased from existence, but the forward choice, the choice to sacrifice everything for love that moved forward forever. In Emma's badge and uniform, in Michelle's tears over a notebook, in the children and grandchildren who would never know their ancestor's name but would inherit his courage. Time can run backwards, existence can be erased, memory can be stolen. But love always moves forward. And somewhere, in the quantum foam, in the space between moments, in the echo of a choice made 19 years ago, Ryan Sullivan felt it. His daughter remembered. His wife knew. His sacrifice mattered. And that was enough. It was always enough.